going on, guys? My name's Alex. We're back with another episode. This is a big one. I got some things right here. So a gas mask with my filter. I'm ready if the cops try to gas us. Not today. I got a little protection. So we got a graph here. This China's social credit system. It doesn't go from 2020 to 2022, but that's okay. I'm not sure if this is online or just social credit, but you can see that they started ramping it up at 2015 and on. In 2019, they really did it. What happened in 2020? You guys remember? COVID. So their last episode, we talked about how they were ramping up their military. That was like 2019, 2020 is when they really started getting their submarine count up. But 2019 here, we just got a smoke stack of social credit. Social credit is scary, guys. We don't want that in a free country. That's just like them, another way for them to control what's going on. Here we have Jen Psaki making a statement about the trucking convoy, or if you see here, the potential convoy. I'm pretty sure it is a convoy, and I'm pretty sure it's a legitimate one. I don't see, it's all about, like I say, the articulation and the wording that they use. So they've been working closely with their federal, state, and local partners to continuously assess the threat environment and keep our communities safe. Our efforts include enhanced intelligence sharing, a critical incident response plan for the U.S. Capitol, a regional security assessment, and a simulation experiment that developed data-driven recommendations to bolster regional security. So we are closely monitoring, closely watching, and working with state and local authorities. So right here, they're working with the Homeland Security Department. They're developing a critical incident response plan for the Capitol. I'd like to go back to the Department of Homeland Security statement up there. In one of the prior episodes, we discussed the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security bulletin that was published on February 7th. Here's that. Jumping back onto this real quick. Domestic terrorism. Right here, they established a new dedicated domestic terrorism branch. Also, on the right side there, DHS is working with public and private sector partners as well as foreign counterparts to identify and evaluate mild dis and misinformation, including false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories spread on social media and other online platforms that endorse or could inspire violence. So when they talk about what their efforts are, talking about a critical incident response plan for the U.S. Capitol, right here they have a new dedicated domestic terrorism branch. In the previous episode, I talked about how they issued the National Guard on February 7th. This DHS domestic terrorism bulletin was issued on February 7th. We're looking at their efforts, right? Their efforts and how are they responding? Because when you look at Canada and how they're responding, I think it's very important to analyze how they did and to see how Biden will try to do it, because like I said before, Trudeau is the one that lobbied Biden back into these mandates, which as we see here at the very top, Canada from any country who qualify as fully vaccinated. Okay, so you have to be fully vaccinated in order to leave Canada or get into it. Well, what is fully vaccinated? Here we have the list of what qualifies you as fully vaccinated. I underlined one specific thing, right? Because we're talking about social credit, online social credit. So I underlined upload proof of vaccination in, was that ArriveCan? Upload proof of vaccination to ArriveCan. That's digital ID, y'all. That is online social credit. That's an online social credit system based around the COVID-19 vaccination. Okay, that's the start of an online social credit system like China has in a free country. We do not want that. That's why we're going to DC. That's why we're stopping these emergency authorizations. That's why we're getting our freedom back. Excuse me. This is Canada. Mind you, I was going to look at what the U.S. qualifications were, but I'm pretty sure they're similar because U.S. truckers would have to comply with Canadian rules. So when we look at Trudeau and how he handled it, we can see an online social credit system starting. Also, the way Trudeau handled it was freezing $18 million total fundraising assets to fundraising sites, Give, Send, Go, and GoFundMe. GoFundMe was the first one at $10 million. Right, GoFundMe, they said they were going to be freezing the funds and distributing the funds to charities of their choice. It's like, charities of their choice. Why wouldn't you give them back to the original donors? See, this amount right here, $18 million, that's more than either political party raised in the presidential election last election. We've got $8 million, right? Just from Give, Send, Go. And they did a great thing, by the way. And then we've got $10 million from GoFundMe. GoFundMe was first. Give, Send, Go was hacked. They released the names of the donors. GoFundMe had... the government was able to just strong arm them and make them bend to their will in the Canadian government there. But Give, Send, Go made a statement saying Canada has absolutely zero jurisdiction over how we manage our funds here at Give, Send, Go. All funds for every campaign on Give, Send, Go flow directly to the recipients of those campaigns, not least of which is the Freedom Convoy campaign. Give, Send, Go was about to convert it to Bitcoin and distribute it through Bitcoin, and the government basically told the banks that, I mean, if you distribute these funds, we're seizing your licenses, etc., etc., etc. They basically made it impossible. They basically did what Biden is doing to Putin right now. They're sanctioning them. They're trying to remove them from society just for a fundraiser for a protest about freedoms. The most peaceful protests we have seen in our lifetimes about freedom, about medical choice, about government overreach, about an online social credit system. These are all things that are worth being concerned about. But yet they're going to invoke martial law or their Emergencies Act there in Canada. It's just crazy. You know, these hackers, I'm not too convinced that Trudeau didn't hire him himself. And I'll get to more on that, on why, in a second. But these hackers, they did leak self-reported names, email addresses, zip codes, and IP addresses. IP addresses. If you guys know about phishing, that's one of the tools that they need, one of the things that these phishers need to hack your stuff. Okay, so it'd make it easier for these other hackers or the same hackers to mess with donors. So this is one of the reasons why I said that I'm not too sure if Trudeau didn't hire these hackers himself. Because here we have a statement from the Windsor Mayor, Drew Dilkins. Now at the top here, this is from National Post. In between the arrows I wrote, compliance or extreme measures will be taken. Okay, because here, and I'm quoting Drew Dilkins, if we can't gain compliance voluntarily, then other measures will have to be taken. I wish I had a date on when this was quoted, but I'm sure it was before the Emergencies Act and before they initiated martial law. I underlined this right here because I thought it was very interesting. You know, when we're comparing how Trudeau responded to how Biden will respond, I thought that was very interesting because right here, this is the very first page that I shared with you guys. As you can see on this underlined area, federal, state, and local partners is who they're closely working with to assess threats on this domestic terrorism bill. Pulling that back off there, they're basically saying you either comply or we'll make you comply. And I don't like that. I don't know about you guys. On the right, you know, I'm just comparing this to this one, yeah. So the circled part on the right there is the same as the middle section here. I just wanted to highlight that again. Okay, they're working with public-private sector partners, public and private sector partners, as well as foreign counterparts to identify this stuff. Okay, so they're working really, really hard because they keep saying it. And when we look at how Trudeau responded, he initiated martial law and he turned his country into a dictatorship. We already read that quote from Give, Send, Go, but Ron DeSantis had something to say and he started an investigation on GoFundMe. Okay, these are two separate. They're very close, Give, Send, Go and GoFundMe. But Ron DeSantis says it is fraud for GoFundMe to commandeer $9 million in donations sent to support truckers and give it to causes of their own choosing. Remember how earlier I said that GoFundMe was distributing the money donated to the truckers to other charities of its choosing, of GoFundMe's choosing. So it's very, 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 very bad. I will work with Ashley Moody to investigate these deceptive practices. These donors should be given a refund. And I agree. Ron DeSantis is leading the charge. I would really like to see Ron and Trump just overwhelm the competition. Okay, something like this. So GoFundMe, right? Initially, they said it was violent. The protests or the convoy had become violent and unlawful. Suck my dick. They backtracked on that statement, redistributing money for Canadian truckers under threat of fraud investigation. Well, if you would have been more virtuous like Give, Send, Go, right, you wouldn't have to be getting investigated for fraud if you didn't bend to the will of the Canadian government. So they said it was violent and unlawful, and then they backtracked their statement, and they're getting investigated for fraud. 4 of the states that are investigating them for fraud is Florida, Missouri, West Virginia, and Texas. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said on Wednesday that his office will investigate GoFundMe for blocking and withholding donations already made to the platform through its website. So these are Texans that he's investigating on behalf of. Removing the campaign from its site could violate the state's Deceptive Trade Practices Act, he said. Yeah, good on them. Good on them. If it wasn't for these 4 states, if it wasn't for those 4 states, this $18 million would have never seen the light of day. If it wasn't for those 4 states, this $18 million would have never seen the light of day. And I don't know about you guys, but I like the light of day. So Florida, Missouri, West Virginia, and Texas. So let's look at the states that are, so those are good states, right? Florida, Missouri, West Virginia, and Texas, in my opinion. Good on them for starting investigations on behalf of their constituents. States sending the National Guard in to DC for the American convoys is New Jersey, Vermont, and West Virginia. So, as I highlighted that Florida, Missouri, West Virginia, and Texas are doing a good thing, I'd also like to highlight that New Jersey, Vermont, and West Virginia are not doing a good thing. So let's look at what they had to say. This is Patrick Leahy from Vermont on the People's Convoy, or what he says, the so-called, this might be the person that wrote it, the so-called Freedom Convoy. I fucking hate these guys. Yeah, we gotta look at the articulation. Vermont is also a state that sent in National Guard to help ensure a peaceful transfer of power during the presidential inauguration. So if there was any foul play on January 6th, Mr. Leahy here had sent troops to the presidential inauguration. They're calling this the so-called Freedom Convoy. So-called freedom. So-called freedom. It's interesting. Their choice of wording there. This is the United States. We are the free country. And it's time we remind them of that. And the so-called Freedom Convoy. It is a freedom convoy. You guys are taking away our freedoms. You're turning this into a dictatorship, a communist country, and this is our country. The freedom that this country was founded on was done with bloodshed, tears, heartache, continental warfare. This was an annihilation of Indian people. Like this freedom quest, right? And as far as the Indian people, I feel like if the United States wasn't formed, I mean, they would have gotten overwhelmed by the British anyways, and who knows what type of free democracy we would have right now as Russia is invading Ukraine. So these are like the little plays in history where, yes, I don't really agree with how the Indians were treated. I am actually part Indian myself. But I also understand the serious nature of what civil liberties mean and how badly we need them. Right. So, anyways, back to the topic here. We're talking about the states that are sending National Guard to DC for the Freedom Convoys. Leahy and the so-called Freedom Convoy, they sent their troops to the inauguration, but right here, right, this is West Virginia, they provide support to their partners, which is interesting. Why not the country or the overall cause of safety, security, liberty, pursuit of happiness, but they're partners? Why not American people or why are we? It's where I'm looking at the wording, right? These guys are putting in little subtle messages for their little goon squads all the time, saying things like, "Oh, thanks for doing that undiplomatically," and "This is my partner." Like so-called Freedom Convoy, fringe minority, right? Domestic terrorism. These guys, insurrectionists. Racists, remember those words? It's gaslighting, and they're trying to delegitimize our opinions with propaganda that we wouldn't be getting at this mass rate if it wasn't for the internet. Okay, so I found it interesting, the wording that they use there with partners. I think these people need to be looked at. These states, especially if they're continuously sending troops in there. So this one was probably the most sensible. There's a tree messing with my lighting. It's okay. Anyways, this was like the most sensible thing. Okay, when we saw when they were trying to nuke the filibuster, that was a sleight of hand tactic, right? Where they try to find common ground, where they try to seem sensible. Let me explain. So, what they were trying to do while they were trying to nuke the filibuster was they were trying to pass all these corrupt voting laws. So you'd have these Democrats on the floor, and they'd start their conversations like, "Oh, I don't agree with nuking the filibuster, but I do agree with the voting law," right? And so what that's doing is it's setting up common ground for people on the fence or in the middle about the voting laws to try to gain their favor, right? Finding that common ground with, "Oh, I don't believe in nuking the filibuster either. The voting law." Oh. So you're not immediately rejecting what they have to say if you find common ground from the beginning, and you start to lower their guard and get them more into a comfort zone because they're hearing things that they're comfortable with. Like, "I don't support nuking the filibuster, but let's pass these corrupt voting laws." Like, no, I see it. I see what you're doing. I don't like it. Stop it. Right now, it is beyond offensive. They say here that they don't let politics get in the middle of decisions. If we jump down, the idea caught on in conservative circles in the United States, scattered protests and planned for next week in a number of states, including New Jersey. They don't let politics get in their way, but then they blame these free choice on medical decisions and social credit on conservative circles. There's people on both sides of the fence that believe in this freedom. I've seen it. I have friends on both sides of the fence. I've lost a lot of lefties because they just won't wake up. But that's okay with me. So this is, which one was this? This is New Jersey. So those are the three states. We got Vermont, West Virginia, and New Jersey. Oh, but there was one more state that was added to the mix. Florida and Ron DeSantis. And I like him because he said, "Fuck you. I am not sending my troops there." You know why? Because you did not specify why National Guard troops would be needed at an event where U.S. Capitol Police and Secret Service traditionally serve as security. Good job, Ron. He rejected that request, which is good. And you know, guys, these are extremely important issues. Our country is at a turning point that we've never seen. You know, the expansion of technology has created and accelerated propaganda and war with other continents. And we have to stay vigilant, stay determined, and use common sense to figure out what's really going on. When I talk about Hunter Biden and in Ukraine and Joe Biden getting people fired with his political power, and I mean, I don't mean to be a broken record, but this shit needs to be said over and over again because people just aren't getting it. You know, I walked around the neighborhood the other day and I was just like knocking on doors, spreading awareness. For real, I did this. And a lot of people didn't even know what the hell happened with Hunter Biden in Ukraine. I knocked on a cop's house. Actually, he was outside. But I was talking to him, and he didn't even know what was going on with that Hunter thing. The conflict of interest in Ukraine. And a lot of people don't, because there's just so much information that people can't keep up. That's why I said in my very first episode, I said people are trained to be triggered. There's just so much information that they're overwhelmed, and they can't keep up. And it leads them to having a shorter fuse. And everyone kind of like gets into these topics and starts becoming more aware at their own pace. That's why I was doing that, like their own pace, right? Everyone's different. Don't force people to get in these conversations. I tend to want to do that, and I found that's not very good. Let them kind of like get into it on their own. That's why I started doing podcasts, right? Because maybe some of these people that I would like to connect with, maybe I can reach them through a third-party means of video, right? So I'm not directly starting these conversations with them, but you know, at least they can hear what I have to say with a lot higher of a, what would it be, output or input? I don't know. Let me know. I think it'd be input, actually, because I'd be inputting into the system. Anyways, hopefully I can reach them with like a more neutral environment and a neutral environment and like a less invasive way of raising these conversations. It's kind of like when I had both my dogs, or even I see it I try to do it with kids too, especially my nieces when they were little. If one was doing a bad thing, I wouldn't even give them attention, right? I would go give the other dog attention that was being good. And basically how that applies here is you're not confronting or rewarding bad behavior. You're skipping to what you see as good behavior, and you're rewarding the good behavior, while the bad behavior sees this from a distance. The bad behavior sees it from a distance, and you're not directly confronting them, escalating the situation. Just interesting psychology to kind of like consider while trying to engage with people in these political conversations that everyone has such short fuses for and are overwhelmed with information. I hope that I didn't miss anything, but if I did, that's okay, and I'll cover it next episode. I'm not scared to reiterate myself and sound like a broken record sometimes, because I don't know who all has watched my videos before. I don't know what their knowledge level is on a lot of these topics. So I don't know what a lot of these people's like knowledge is on these topics. And I just want to spread awareness. I just want people to raise these conversations. Something's awakened in me a couple of years ago when I started realizing the mass confusion. Let's put it like that. Mass confusion. And a lot of people, they don't have the mental capacity, the patience, or the time, or the priority of interest to look these issues up and look into them for themselves. And like I said before, grab that shovel and dig up these articles and information, brush them off and look at them, and then stack them up, compare them on a timeline, zooming out, looking at the big picture here, because these other leaders of these other countries, they're in office for decades and decades and decades, where we have 4 8-year terms here. Okay, these other leaders, they're looking at things long term. They're not really short term planning. It's like I said before, China knew 20 years when Hong Kong was going to be up for grabs. They knew 20 years before it was going to be ready to be ripe for the picking, if you will. So you got to zoom out and stack these things up and look at them together and see how they correlate and see if there was a strategy, etc., etc., etc. That's why I always jump back to like China and the timeline of China with when they started ramping up their military, when they started really ramping up their online social credit or even social credit. Excuse me. If I look at when Russia invaded or tried to seize Indian territory, also when China was wanting to take Taiwan, I had a huge list, and I actually left some stuff out last time, and I'm not gonna reiterate those excuse me right now. But go back, watch those other videos. Some of these things I say right now will probably make a little bit more sense if you were to do so. And I apologize, some of my older videos aren't as my older videos don't really retain attention as well. I'm doing a lot of editing, and I cut out like the dull areas. I do a lot of thinking, and I don't script this stuff out. I'll do a couple slides, and I'll like highlight a couple things I want to talk about, but I do a lot of thinking, and I do a lot of sifting through the scenes on my software, and it's fun. It's fun, and I really enjoy learning how to edit. But like I said, some of my older videos, they're not as aesthetically pleasing, so bear with that, and just keep in mind, like, try to remember what I was talking about before I paused, because I'm good at that. And what I'm not good at is articulation through longer periods of thought, or articulations on things that I haven't articulated before. And like I said, like, I've become a better version of myself from watching podcasts, and I hope to become an even better version of myself from doing podcasts and articulating these issues, and communicating. But for now, that's it. Please like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notifications. I need 1,000 subscribers on YouTube to be able to live stream, so please do that. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you very much.